My next guest on today's podcast is Ajay Bulusu, who is a co-founder of this company called NextBillion.ai. The company is in the space of spatial and map technologies and building a very unique and a very promising platform to solve the world of supply chain issues which are there in the industry.
It's a space that nobody touches generally. It's because a very difficult space because the talent pool available is very less in the world. But apart from that, we were solving the problem already in our old life. And we knew the pitfalls of this problem. We didn't know how big the problem is, but we knew there were enough people to use that stuff if we build it.
Ajay didn't start his company right out of the gate from a campus, but he has worked in the industry and worked with some of the biggest brands like Google, Grab, American Express, and many more. And it's fascinating to hear from him how, working for almost a decade, he took a plunge to go ahead and start this new company along with his two other co-founders. And throughout the conversation, you would hear, without me giving a lot of perspectives, but how grounded and more focused he is on building a right business for the company which he is working on. It is fascinating to hear that he's so matured and focused on terms of what he's building and what his company is building.
Some driver gives you feedback, you can feed it back into your system, it gets updated for the next driver. Okay. That's our promise, because as today you can't even do that. As today you can't go complain to anyone. It will take you 6 months for you to even update the smallest of the smallest thing, right? So for us, the way we look at it is very simple, right? So the way we look at it is, can we have the packaging ecosystem to keep maps fresh as well as use the freshness of the map to drive business value?
So without much further ado, let me get on with it. Hi Ajay, welcome to Masters Decoded Podcast Season 3. Really glad to have you on the show today.
Hey, thanks Anis. It's my pleasure here.
Ajay, you run a very interesting company, NextBillion.ai. But before we get to doing that, and I've been following you on LinkedIn. You and I are connected on LinkedIn for quite a while now. But let's rewind a little bit. I know you are in Singapore right now, currently, and you're based out of Singapore. But let's rewind a little bit. Can you share a little bit about your childhood? Where did you grow up? What was that phase of your life looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Hyderabad. Throughout my whenever I knew conscious, I was in Hyderabad. So we moved from Bangalore, actually, my parents and me. Had a very typical Indian middle class childhood, nothing special. Grew up in a small nuclear family. My dad was an entrepreneur as well. My dad left a very comfortable job in Canara Bank back in the day to start his own merchant banking consulting company. Then India was going through the IT boom in the 90s. Did exceptionally well, actually, in fact, at that point. And then we've seen a lot of ups and downs. So like first Papa did well, then he didn't do well, and then he did well, again didn't do well. So he had 2 cycles of extremely good, extremely good economic stature as well as extremely bad economic stature. So I've been through 2 of those cycles, so I understand a little bit of how it is in the life of when you don't have something stable. And then obviously I wasn't a very bright child, to say the least. I mean, I wasn't like a very intelligent topper sort of a kid. So I always knew there has to be a more something else apart from education for me in life. So that I always knew since childhood, since my 8th, 9th grade, because I was coaching for IIT for a long time. And I saw the people around me and how generally brilliant people were. Right. So I told my dad in 8th grade itself that I don't think I'll crack IIT. Right. So, but my dad said everything with hard work will happen, except again, like we had a very typical parent-child conversation. And then, the rest is history. Then it never happened. And I mean, I think like with any other Andhra, Telugu kid, that's the quintessential path you follow. Right, you essentially try and crack engineering. If it happens, doesn't happen. So this is essentially how it was. Otherwise, a lovely childhood. There's nothing nothing to complain. But I think for me, the entrepreneurial spirit and why I wanted to start up comes from the fact that my dad started up in extremely tough times as well. So I never saw a reason why I shouldn't at some point in my life. But I was also not practical about, first I need to gain experience. I want to do this the right way. And that's why maybe I'm a older, later entrepreneur.
Okay. I've looked at your LinkedIn profile. Like you said, you are an older entrepreneur, but you started off with your corporate career.
Yes.
But before that, you went abroad to studies and all of that. So how did that all happen? You were in Hyderabad. Where did London come into picture, and how did London feature up?
So it's the same thing. I mean, like good or bad, I couldn't crack anything in India. So my
Okay.
ranks were terrible. My scores were terrible. In fact, even my 12th score was terrible compared to what people usually get in like Hyderabad. So I said, luckily or unluckily, Papa was decently well to do. So he said, okay, listen, this is not working out, right? So let's just send you abroad. So even he took risks even then. So like took a bunch of loan and said, let's just go. But I have been, how do I say, I've been lucky throughout, right? Ever since like I turned 18, 19, that I didn't have to, I had a support system back home. Right. So
Hmm.
then it so happened that I got into Leeds. Leeds was a very good engineering and electronics school. So also they gave me a good scholarship. I'm like, wow, okay, fine. Like, like it was probably the right time to move on. And it was a punt actually. I was actually going nowhere that year. It's because all my ranks were bad and I didn't have a backup. I didn't do my SREs or I didn't do, the SAT, sorry. And so I had given nothing else except for thinking in India, something I will crack. Right. So it so happened that Leeds came about suddenly and they said, listen, like they did a road show that year in Hyderabad. And I said, okay, if they are giving me an admission, I don't want to waste a year. Right. Because already I think I've wasted enough. And I told my dad that, listen, I don't think I will crack it just because another 1 year I study for something. And so it was a very practical decision. It was a good school. It's an engineering branch. I wanted electronics. Just took the plunge and left. Right. So, and then the rest is history.
You came back to India and you started working in Indian corporate system. So,
Correct.
I know that getting into a certain space and choosing your first job is always an interesting process.
Yeah.
So, how did that first job come about? Was it a campus or was it more
No,
which you were applying for a job?
I think I have had nothing in life easy is what I think. There was no campus at all because I graduated in recession.
Okay.
2008, 9 were my graduation. Like 8 was my engineering, 9 was masters. So in fact, I did masters because there were no jobs in
Okay.
2008. So and then after that there were even no jobs, right? So I said, okay, then what do? You take there was also some personal tragedies at home. So I said, okay, this is like a good time to come back home and stay with parents. So essentially, I mean, however far I was, I've been extremely homebound. Even today, I go home every month. So
Okay.
I was just like, okay, then this is the right time to go home, stay with my mom and dad for a while, and figure it out. It's because UK was going nowhere at that point. Even as a country, UK was in banking recession, and it was not. I mean, similar situation right now in like UK. So I think I realized that okay, then there's no campus. So I came home and took like 3-4 months just to figure it out. Anyway, there were no jobs, and then I could live rent free at home.
Mhm.
So just came back home and I stayed. And then I said, okay, I did a master's, I did engineering. What do I do? In fact, my first job was my like so my dad was being like a banker throughout. So he had a lot of connections in Bombay. He said, why don't you go work for someone? And the last thing I wanted to do after educating myself, already my father sponsoring my education and everything was that he gets me a job. So I didn't take up any of the jobs, though they were way better paid than what I actually got the first time. So I registered at Naukri.com and I got my first job. Right. So essentially put up my profile. There were a bunch of interviews that I got, and there was this small demand forecasting supply chain company called Steelwedge, now acquired by JDA, I think. They had a small back end office. I said, listen, like I'll take this job. I'm not going to go to any of the merchant banks that my dad was suggesting, or like, even the big fours that he was trying to get me into. I just took a very small job in a very small company. Right. So they were paying me like 14,000 a month or something like that. And I was more than happy because I got it on my own. Right. So that's how the corporate actually career started. Then obviously it being my hometown, I had a lot of friends, and obviously Google was scaling at that point. And then through my social, like I met somebody at a bar actually who knew somebody who was working at Google, and they said, hey, we're recruiting a lot, and I said, sure, like why don't you put an application? And actually that's how Google happened. There was just literally a few. There were like 60, 70 people called on the day to do a test and everything. Uh, Out of which two of us got in right
Wow.
on
But
on that day
there is too
interview.
much of, you see a lot of people who've got into Google talking about how difficult it is to get into Google. Now, 2
Yeah,
out of 60 is still a strict conversion, but people
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about
It's
how
tough.
strict the process was, how difficult the process is, right? I know you will be,
It's not.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy for sure. It's not very tough for sure. Also, I mean, uh, I mean, I keep telling my wife. So my wife has cracked Google, Facebook in the same lifetime, and that's actually even more tougher, right? Because
Okay.
to crack, actually, Facebook is tougher.
Huh?
But in reality, when I joined Google, they were on a hiring spree. That was one, but still they were very strict, right? They would not hire. They would in fact shelve projects instead of hiring some people. I also got it as a lateral. Lateral is way tougher than campus because campus they have to hire X number of people on the day, so they do it a little quicker. But I came in where they could take all the time in the world. I already had a job. So I went through almost 6 to 8 rounds at that point.
Nice.
Uh, and it's more general cognitive ability than skill actually in Google. They hire a certain personality type. It's not, they don't hire for your resume or they don't hire for your, yes, for engineering and, like for more technical roles, yes, they hire from the school and the sort of the, your merit. But for non-engineering roles, there's a very generic hiring process. So they hire you based on personality, they hire you based on communication, your general leadership. If you're thrown into a problem, how do you innovatively in the interview think about coming out of it? So they think on how you think on the fly rather than prep and come. So this I was anyway always sort of good at. I could never prepare. Even like I know you sent me a bunch of questions. I didn't even see any of the questions. Right. So I generally always prefer that I am unprepared for something. And so Google exactly was that. I was super unprepared. I just went with the flow. And it just so happened that 8, 9 people liked me, so it just got through.
Now, when I look at your career, you've worked in some of the biggest names in the industry, whether it is Google, whether it is Amex, or whether it is Grab. You
Yeah.
know, how much was intentional, or how much was, when you look back, how much was you were just going with the flow? Because you spoke about this
No, no,
just.
it was all serendipity. Most of my career moves have been serendipity. It was never planned. In fact, whenever I have planned, I have not taken that job. In
Okay.
I After Google, when I was in Google, I had a love-hate relationship with Facebook thrice. Once
Okay.
I said no, once they said no, like so whenever I planned to move out, it never happened. Same thing with any of the startups in India. I interviewed for Flipkart, InMobi. I never moved out. It so happened
Why?
that Google threw me out
Why?
after 5 years, right?
Why is that?
I just don't know. I don't know. It just didn't happen. And in Google, I was very comfy and I was getting roles within Google,
Okay.
which was pretty good actually. So I could crack roles that actually many could not at that point. Like when I went to Maps in Google, which is very difficult to get into. And so internally, actually moving in Google is way tougher than external. So you can't just move inside. They have an option to move, but it's very difficult. You have to go through all the rounds again in Google. So that I switched thrice. So I was pretty good at internal mobility than external mobility. So I was learning early stages in career. I didn't want to switch too much. I wanted to gather experience in a company. So in Google, I did everything: operations, sales, partnerships, product, program.
Wow.
So I tried and learn how much ever I could. And also Google at that time was super flexible. Then they also moved me to California, right? So
Okay.
I didn't ever optimize for in my early stage for vertical growth. I in fact only optimized for horizontal. I wanted to learn as much as I could in my sort of formative years of career. And I just picked that, right? And I just thought, like, okay, more money, more promotions is not right now key for me. I want to learn as much as I can. So, because I knew at the end of a 10, 12-year career, everyone averages out. People who grow very quickly initially will taper off. People who grow gradually also will be in the same place. Right. So that's the punt I took.
Okay. So, what all departments did you traverse within Google?
So I
I know you
started off in
worked in
operations.
maps, for sure.
Yeah, so I started off in operations, in fact, AdWords, where my first job was reviewing pornographic ads that
Okay.
get put on the internet a lot in Google. So I mean, right now they have enough AI to like filter them out, but in 2011 it was more assisted intelligence. You had a human in the loop to do. So I did that for a while. Then, in fact, I went into search quality, which is essentially a more technical way of same thing, but in search. Search
Okay.
has a lot more gory content that you can imagine that what
Yeah.
ads have. So because it's all organic. Did that for a while, and then I switched, in fact, to partnerships and sales. So I went into something called channel sales, where we had a huge channel program generating a
Yep.
couple of $1 billion a year for Google. Did that for a while, and then there up every 3 or 4 years, somebody used to hire in Maps because Maps is a huge backend in Hyderabad. So, and it's very rarely you open a role itself in that. So when they opened up, in fact, they were 100 plus people who interviewed for those roles, and two of us got in again.
Wow.
So, so that was very, very difficult it was actually a 4-month interview process inside. It's not easy to switch ladders. Rather, I'll put it that way. It was not easy before. Now with the amount of scale and this thing, it's I think a little better. But when we were there, it was a very small company still, Google. So everyone almost knew everybody in Hyderabad office, and even globally within some roles, very few people were hired.
Okay.
So when I had that opportunity at very young age, like I was 24, 25, and I had a team of like 600 to 800 people in the
Nice.
vendor operations that I was managing. So that exposure was very different for me. And then also I was working with some of the smartest I have ever met in my life, like some of the smartest people at Google, right? Like, because Maps is very technical, and the sort of work we were doing was like world changing. It was not just you're doing something small, like you're trying to just say I'm going to map out Australia tomorrow, and that's like a very very big vision in itself to do, right? So stuff that I had was exposed to at that point was transformational, I would say, in my life, like where I had never seen anything like that in my life. Like even true big tech, what is true big tech is what I saw that time. So that's what I think sort of molded my thought process after moving into the more technical space of Maps. So I've done a bunch of roles inside Google before that.
So where did the kida, or the sorry if I'm using that word, is of starting your own company come about? Like where did
So,
it all begin?
so that always was there, but I tried to start off once prior in between my jobs.
Okay.
In fact, I would have gotten funded also for it, but I was alone. So like my present co-founder was still not ready to leave his job, right? So when I was in Grab, uh, what happened was we joined Grab, and within 3 years we had escalated the way our career went. That's also
Okay.
because obviously Grab also escalated the way it was, but the sort of work we were doing was very bleeding edge, cookie cutter, all of these words you can use, right? Where we were creating something that didn't exist, one. And two is that we were trying to take on a very, very big company to say, listen, like we can build our own spatial data and mapping services within this company. And we were entrepreneurs, for the lack of better words. Like we raised capital instead from our founder. We set up a team from 3 to 300. We learned on the way. From learners, we became educators in the same field. uh People were coming to us and saying after 3 years, how do you do what you did, right? Like this is insanely good. How is Grab able to do all of these things, blah blah blah? And we said, okay. Then we also, same way, career accelerated. Like we could not go beyond that level. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
could, but the upside was too less for us. So the only other upside we had was, okay, let's go startup, right? That was only logical conclusion we could come up with. We could get a same job at a higher, let's say I could become a VP somewhere, and then earn maybe 20% more. But truly, was that the calling? Then because I think my co-founder is insanely smart, so I keep telling him that, dude, like we need to start up, right? We need to, you have all the brains, and I think I have a little business acumen. We should go. And so it took me some convincing for Gaurav. And then the minute he said, let's do it, we said, let's do it. Then we literally made a 10 slider deck
Wow.
with very, very scrappy thoughts that we had. We raised capital within 4 weeks. And then I said,
Wow.
dude, somebody's coming to fund you. Like we can take it like an MBA and just go do it. That's how startup started, right? So again, extremely serendipitous in some way, a little planned, little unplanned, but end to end took us just 3 months. October, we thought we'd start up, and with December, I quit my job. And then slowly Gaurav quit his job, and Shaolin quit his job. So it was like we had 7 million in the bank even before we could quit. So we said, let's just do it.
So you all are three founders right now.
Yes.
So how does the role get divided between the three of you?
We all are just co-founders, so we've always believed in no titles. So we've kept the title of CEO, COO, CTO, everything. I mean, Shaurya is very clearly CTO, meaning he's just the technical guy in the company. Whereas me and Gaurav, we do. So I'm more external facing CEO in terms of investor relations and things like this. Gaurav is more the internal facing CEO. So
Yeah.
a day to day, and because we're a product run company, we wanted to be product first.
Yeah.
So we kept the role very simply that, listen, like anything we want to be driven by Gaurav's vision, like not by Ajay's vision into the company, right? So we have very clear vetoes. I mean, touch wood, we've worked with each other for now, 6 years. So there's a lot of trust in what we each do.
Okay.
That's the other reason why I think we've been successful since first day. Like many ask me, oh my God, like you've never had these issues. And I'm like, I don't even think those things come into our mind. Yes, we have healthy debates, we have healthy discussions, healthy fights, but it's all about work.
Yeah.
uh, the beauty is that we were never friends before. So we started as colleagues who had worked professionally with each other, so we could give feedback to each other. I would never start up with my friends, so I don't want. So we don't have this very. We are informal, but we are still formal, right? So,
Why not
and
start
this,
up with friends? Why not start off with friends? This is a very interesting point you've just said. Why not start off with friends?
I won't,
Okay.
because I just think that professional and personal should be kept like very aside. I've seen my father burn his hands starting up with his friends. Like I've seen my other friends burn their hands starting up with friends, because if shit hits the roof, you lose both,
Yeah.
right? So, and I don't want to lose my friends. So I have been very clear since first day. We don't even hire friends and family in our company. I didn't even recruit my own brother into the company. So we were very like strict into, we don't hire anybody we know, right?
Okay.
Also, we don't hire anybody we can't fire. So
Okay.
so we've kept everything very professional in the company. So
Nice.
that's why I think, because once personal and professional mix, it's not a good idea.
So Ajay, building on to this further, now why this idea of focused on spatial technology, right, and building a spatial product? Why this space? And
So
you have behemoths there, right? You
yeah,
have
yeah,
Google and the Apples of the world, who are basically have all the power, money, everything built onto it. So why
yeah.
pick on that?
So it's a space that nobody touches generally. It's
Okay.
because a very difficult space, because the talent pool available is very less in the world for
Yeah.
maps and spatial data in general. But apart from that, we were solving the problem already in our old life, and we knew the pitfalls of this
Okay.
problem. We didn't know how big the problem is, but we knew there were enough people to use that stuff if we build it. Two is that we also had awareness that enterprises, nobody is touching. A business to consumer, as you said, the behemoths are always very, I want to acquire more customers, I want to acquire more, whatever, I want to have better maps, etc. was there. But
Yeah.
in terms of enterprises, nobody was touching it. Right. So enterprise mapping was an unhot, untouched space.
Okay.
And we were solving this problem at scale in our prior life, and we understood, oh, there is a pretty decent market if we can solve this in a specific fashion of not owning data, right?
Okay.
So everyone said, okay, in our world for the last decade, the better the data, the better the maps, which is true still. But we think data will become free in the next whatever decade. Spatial data is very open now, a lot of open source, a lot of governments, a lot of people are putting out data. So we think whoever has the best software to package this data in the right fashion is going to win,
Okay.
not the person with the best data, right? So this is how we started building a software first pure AI company, not data first mapping company,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, we still don't know how large the problem is. We think overall the problem of moving things in the world is very large.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to move anything in the world, you need a map. And as of today, people are not using maps. They're still using Excel or something like that at times. So our vision is to move everything efficiently in the world.
Now, when you think about maps, okay, and when you think about developed countries specifically,
Yeah.
and let's, for the ease of conversation, let's talk about developed and underdeveloped parts of the world, okay?
Mhm.
The developed parts of the world keep changing significantly, and
Correct.
you have these open source ecosystems or the satellite open source satellite maps. They are outdated, and
Correct.
they are not updated as of, let's say, if there's a new bridge open today, it will take at least a month for that data to refresh to have the satellites being updating with their new maps. So
Correct.
that's a challenge, right? When you, because the premise which you said your company operates at, how do you build a wrapper around the data which is already available, which you said is free or is going to be free, and you build a right package around it or right wrapper, so that, but at the same time, if that wrapper is good but the garbage which is coming in, the data is bad, you're providing a bad output. So how do you deal with that challenge? Because that's something which is there in my head, like how do you deal with that challenge?
See, anything real time, I don't think anybody in the world can deal with,
Yeah.
right? So, but what we have built is a tooling ecosystem that helps you update the bridge in the next 1 hour, right?
Oh.
Like some driver gives you feedback, you can feed it back into your system, it gets updated for the next driver.
Okay.
That's our promise, because as of today, you can't even do that. As of today, you can't go complain to anyone. It'll take you 6 months for you to even update the smallest of the smallest thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for us, what the way we look at it is very simple, right? So the way we look at it is, can we have the packaging ecosystem to keep maps fresh, as well as use the freshness of the map to drive business value?
Yeah.
As of today, it's just not about saying the bridge is open or closed. Is that, can we avoid the second driver going and getting stuck again on the bridge?
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem we are solving. We are not trying to solve the problem of, is the bridge freshest, or do I have the freshest map data? Is it that can I feed back this bad data into the system that helps efficiency? So this is the sort of problems we are trying to solve, right? So, and whereas when you see the behemoths, they're trying to see whether I have all the maps of the world. We don't care about the maps of the world. We are just saying, hey, for a logistics trucking business, am I the most efficient routing product?
Interesting.
Are they taking the routes that make sense, that are more efficient, that can be greener, that can be less fuel depreciating, that can be more cost effective? These are the models we build. We're not trying to say that I'm going to take satellite imagery of Australia or Thailand and extract every highway on the road. That's not our job,
Yeah.
right? There's already somebody extracting the highways. Am I able to package the highway routing the best for the trucks? That's the space we play in.
Yeah. You're not building a trekking or a cycling map as an example,
No,
which
no,
consumers needed, right? It is
no.
largely B2B centric.
It's
Now,
only B2B. We don't want to ever be B2C.
now there is that trust aspect, and today you spoke about the driver. The driver would say, "Hey, I use Google Maps. Why would I use a company provided app?" Now, I'm sure whether it's an XYZ company which they have deployed your technology. Uh,
Mhm,
and even in maps today, things are getting competitive, right? There are two or three players. Google has acquired Waze as an example, at least in
mhm.
the international market, and then there is Apple Maps. People are accustomed to those maps, right? They trust those, then they would trust some other. So how does that trust play into this factor?
So trust mainly is so here's two ways to look at it. We are not consumer facing, we're an infrastructure company,
Yeah.
right? So there's nothing that you see and touch and feel of what we are doing. It's all on the back end, right? You're calculating a simple time, simple distance, simple route. So, but you need your end drivers or your companies to trust the
Yes.
route you're giving is
Yep.
correct.
Yep.
And for us, so we do it two ways. A, that we build on the business data our customers have. We don't own our own data. So at any point, a lot of the intelligence that is getting spat out is from the customer's data. So that itself says that it is more ground truth than something more modeled on generic behavior that happens on Android or Apple, right?
Yeah.
So there itself, there's a trust tick mark. Second trust tick mark is we are giving them a tooling ecosystem that helps them, as I said, keep these things fresh. So they trust that if I feed this data back into the system, then this the time or the route or the distance that like NextBillion is spitting out is going to be good.
Okay.
So since they are already built on very, very specific business logic as well as very, very trusted sources of feedback, our hope is eventually in the future that this tooling ecosystem just helps build more of this trust rather than us collecting all this data on our own and trying to say, I'm going to distribute it trustworthily,
Okay.
right? Everything is more sourced by the company rather than sourced by us. That is the biggest difference.
Yeah. Now, you are working and your clients are in variety of industries, right? There may
Mhm.
be people who are in perishable space. There are people
Yeah,
who don't care whether their products reach tomorrow, right? They are okay with
correct.
their products reaching in a week time period,
Yes,
or there will be people who would care that my product should reach within an hour, as an example,
yes,
right? Even
correct.
in the perishable space. Now, we'll come to the segregation and catering your product and solution to that kind of category. But you know I have been in space where I have seen B2B businesses being built. That first customer is
Mhm.
critical. uh,
Correct,
and in B2B specifically, that first customer who can take punt on you, where you just have a wrapper, but you don't have data, you don't have use cases to prove your metal. It's just you
yeah,
in your past
yeah,
experience to prove that. you know can you
correct.
share that experience of that first customer, how you all were able to bring in, because that will be good for the listeners also who may be thinking of building a B2B product.
Yeah, so again, there's no rocket science. Your first customer, you should just know the first buyer. I cannot go and say I did some stellar job of bringing in the first customer. We knew enough people in mapping. You know, enough people who would at least try and test us out if we build something. That's other reason why I think starting up a little later in life is important because you've built a network and trust of people, especially B2B. See, B2C is the arrow in the dark, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it may hit, sometimes it may not hit. But B2B is a very scientific game.
Yeah.
It's not arrow in the dark. You cannot go and solve a problem for another business without you knowing the buyer of that problem. So we knew a few buyers, luckily. So the first customer was literally saying, hey, I've started this. Can you please be my customer? Right? I want you to test it out. I want to try it. You don't pay me now, you pay me later on. Uh, that's how it happened. So we just knew a few people in a few companies, reached out to 10 or 20, two said they'll try. And then we didn't even know marketing sales for 1.5 years. We thought this is the only way to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Then we started set up a marketing team, sales team, GTM team, and they started bringing in customers. But initial first year was just purely just
Network.
network contacts, VC network, talking to like lots and lots and lots of people, uh, literally spending all day on sales calls, understanding the problem, understanding what can we solve, what can we solve. Because in our world, you can solve many things.
Yeah.
And prioritizing as a startup on what you want to solve, what is commercially viable, how don't you become a sweatshop for a larger company, how do you actually build a B2B scalable company. These were the most important questions to answer the first 6 months to 1 year. So the first few customers purely is on network and investor network. That's it.
Now going back to that previous question which I was asking is the segregation of customers, right? Perishables, non-perishable, even
Yeah.
perishable have. Now the data becomes very interesting, specifically when you think about supply chain and logistics.
Yes.
Truck, a cold storage truck moving from point A to point B would
Mhm.
need to go into 30 minutes, let's say, versus a point A to point B, same type of a truck but carrying different goods would care less if it's an hour. But then the fuel efficiency, time efficiency, and all of that comes into play. How do you enable the optimization on both, right? One is keeping the product in movement in mind, as well as the other KPIs which the companies would care for. Am I being environmentally sustainable? Am I saving cost? Am I reducing drive time, right? Because all these are cost factors, uh,
Yeah.
irrespective of the product being shipped. So meaning I've not looked at your platform, but does that optimization enable
Yeah.
the end customer to
So yeah, so see a beauty of building an API company versus a solutions company is this, that any factors of this can be completely modeled as you want. Right?
Mhm.
We are not a fixed solution for a fixed vertical for a fixed problem. You don't have to go and recode everything. So infra infra companies when they scale, that's where they scale very quickly. We are still not hit. I think we've still not hit that cusp of scaling. But we can customize exactly what you asked for. Like let's say you're a perishable truck, for you, objective function is time, not distance or cost. You want it to reach quickest because your strawberries get spoiled if they go late. We
Yeah.
can optimize for that. Vis-a-vis, you are a company that is transporting tissue papers and you don't care. It goes 1 day late, 2 days late. It's okay. But you're more worried about, I want to optimize my cost. I want to load up a lot of tissue papers into a box.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a perishable item. Completely doable. All of this can be completely doable with the easy configuration change. I don't have to go back to my developer. Like my solutions people can just configure it and change it. Right. So that's how we've built the platform. We also built the platform multi-tenant. It means that you want all this to be hosted on some container in your own system. We can do that. There's no need
Interesting.
to go into anything very heavyweight on premise. We've also made sure that enterprises like really care about data privacy and security for their own systems. So we can completely make this in their own cluster of AWS if you want. Right. So data doesn't even go out. So data stays in their cluster. You read write from their cluster and build the model on top. So we have a very advanced architecture. We are more an engineering company than an AI company, right? Because mapping is a very engineering centric problem, not an AI. AI is just an input into engineering.
Yeah.
So we have made sure we built engineering systems that scale, engineering process that scale. So the first 2.5 years, that's why we didn't even open up the platform to anyone, right? It was just alpha, beta testers, and we building it. We only gave out the cookie cutter APIs that hey, we're a poor man's this company wanted to use us, but right now we have enterprise use cases, meaning the exact cold storage perishable should avoid, let's say, downtowns because they get stuck. We have a full-fledged way to do it, right from the map data up to the algorithm.
Nice.
As of today, like it's just not algo or just not. We have the whole ecosystem of products you can use to have massive business efficiency. This is not like a couple of $1,000s, but you can save millions of dollars in doing this work. So this is how we are envisioning that like use cases will play out.
When you build a product company, specifically within the infrastructure, there is always an urge to go ahead and go wide and go deep at the same time, because your customers ask you for frills and bells and whistles and all of that, and versus your own inclination. So if you look at the original vision of the product which you all started
Mhm.
off to where it is today, is it,
Mhm.
how much have you all gone wide and deep from a qualitative aspect, which you would, from your own analysis, you would say?
So we have gone we've gone wide more than deep. It's
Okay.
because we understood that going deep is going to be like a rabbit hole which may not scale into. At least our predecessors who we've seen all have plateaued somewhere. We've not even peaked to plateau, to be frank. So we thought, okay, why don't we let's not go deep. Okay,
Okay.
so we'll build industry specific solutions once the breadth is covered. So That's exactly what we did. 2.5 years, we built a very wide horizontal location platform, which was map data agnostic. Now we are building industry specific solutions, like industry specific solutions for omni-channel retail, for supply chain, for logistics B2B, for trucking, for two-wheeler, for custom maps. That's how we are looking at the modules. Right. So first you build a more generic platform that is pretty sustainable, even with just basic stuff, right? You don't want any customization. Okay, you can come and use my platform still. But right now we are now building the industry solutions on top, which is making more sense as the time is expanding. But we can't do both. Like we can't build industry solutions as well as build a generic platform at the same time.
Okay.
So the fact is that even for generic platform, there was enough demand that people were using a basic cookie cutter distance time calculations that was better than open source.
Okay.
And not as good as Google, as an example, somewhere in the middle. There's enough market for that also. But then we realized if you have to really reach the enterprise scale, we have to build very few industry specific solutions on top, understanding the jargon, understanding how people do field force management, how people do B2B logistics, how people do trucking. That is what this year has been on, right? 2023 is, we think, our breakout year in terms of if we really break out, this is the year. If we don't break out this year, means there's no point of building a startup at all, in my opinion, right? We have never pivoted too much.
Okay.
We still think the location space is big, map space is big. Anything location, map, infrastructure, we will build. Anything solutions, customization, only for one customer, etc., we've never taken up work. We've had enough offers that one customer said, I want these solutions to be built for me. We said, we don't want to do it. Right? We are not a software development
How do you
company.
stop that temptation? Sorry, I'm interrupting. How do you stop the temptation? Because these big giants
It's
will
a
come and
call
say,
you have to take, right? It's a call. It's very easy to get tempted by $1, $2, or $3 million account and say, listen, like, I am early and this person is going to give me for the next year, every year, 1 million. But are there enough of these personas that are going to give you the same software? Can you scale without development effort? That's a maturity call you have to take, right? So, and also for us, we had money,
yeah,
right? We had raised capital. So that gave us some of the guts as well, right? It's not guts because we were never a seed funded. We never had to, uh, we are an entitled startup, and I do have no shame in saying this, right? Because we are a very, very, very entitled startup. We raised lots of capital initially. So we could focus on the problem in hand rather than trying to raise funding.
yeah.
Right? So we were always very crystal clear on the hires we wanted to make. Everyone was supposed to be a certain high quality. So all this happened because we had money. And that's what I tell people, that, hey, this is not some rocket science that we said no to customers. We said no to customers because we had money. Right. And two, we said no to customers is also because we knew exactly what we were building. If it doesn't scale beyond, is the same customer, at least can you get 10 more of the same type? It need not be 100. Right?
Yeah.
If I have one person in this space, we speak to 2-3 more and they say, this is not our problem. It's something else. We don't do it. But if at least 5-10 customers are coming inbound, outbound, they can be smaller by nature. But the fact is, this is a very scalable thing then. Right? You have 5-10 people asking you for this. And it's fine to invest, even if it's like just a $10,000 account, but you can get like 200 $10,000 accounts, right? Rather than you getting two like $1 million accounts. So that's the way we've looked at it always.
Today you spoke about something, and there is a big buzzword. I'm sure there will be temptation. Your domain is nextbillion.ai.
Yeah.
But you said your company is not an AI company, it's an engineering company, because MAP is a very engineering setup. What do you
Correct.
feel about this buzzword about AI, and do you all incorporate that in your sales pitch?
See, this is going on since my Google days, right? There's no buzzword. It's about how much VCs buzz a certain.
Yeah.
It's how do I say? It's all about thesis that the VC builds, right?
Yeah.
And then they just put it out in the media and say, listen, this is the next big thing, right? Like, I mean, Clubhouse was supposed to be a very big thing soon. Like you saw the number of startups that died during the pandemic hype.
Yeah.
So we've just not even thought. So we don't actually generally care about macro trends all that much, right? So we just see what is going on. We didn't name it .ai 3 years ago thinking AI will become big. So we named it .ai because a lot of AI actually used in mapping. So when you want to position the company as on what we are an engineering plus AI company rather than just a pure AI company. So this whole generative AI is the new buzz, right? So anybody who starts some generative AI will get funded in the next 2 years. So how many will live later, we'll see.
Yeah.
How many will copy paste, we'll see. So the two things we were very clear that we are not a copy paste company. It's been 3.5 years, and even today when I raise capital, they ask me who's your competition. I said, as of today, what we are building, there is no exact competition. There's competition in many verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Competition mapping, in routing, in route optimization, in eventually location analytics, visualization. There's always competition. But as a holistic platform, I don't know, right, who's there. So we've always differentiated in our technology. That's also been our peril, because we are not ever going with the wave,
Yeah.
right? So we are making our own wave actually as much as possible. Every fundraise for us has been like, we have to convince the VC that, hey, what we are building is interesting, rather than the VC saying, I know I'm already convinced, are you building in this space, right? So it's always in reverse for us. And we it's also tough to category create. We realized you cannot category create early.
Yeah.
So what we had to then also do is that be in an existing category of routing or mapping and innovate in that space. Because if you're totally category creating in this era, right, it's very tough to get funded, right? You cannot say there is no referenceability at all and fund me. So to your point of this AI, the generative AI space, uh, quantum computing, these have been there for a long time. Okay.
Yep.
It's just that now after ChatGPT, everybody's building something on ChatGPT. So that's the hype, right? It's a very, very, now being in the system for almost 12 years, I realize it's just a curve. So curves come in, is a proper sine curve,
Yeah.
right? So we'll wait and watch. But for us, we don't really pride on that it's a AI company or this thing. We just say this problem is tough. If we crack this problem, we'll become a very, very, very big company. If not, we'll fail. So
Mm-hmm.
we are not a company. We're a company with a very, very binary outcome. And this I tell everyone very openly. Either we'll become very big or we'll fail. There is no in between for us.
And living on this thread, right? It's like you're walking a tightrope uh, with your hands tied behind, I would use that word. And you either can pass that and achieve success, or you fall off, right? And
Yeah,
you have a term. And you said 2023 is going to be a breakout year for you.
correct.
How do you keep yourself motivated? Because there is paranoia also building on. Yeah.
Yeah,
We are already in May, 5 months down. Okay. We only have 7 months left. Okay. 210 days left only, as an example. How do you balance that out? And not just balance for yourself, but balance for your organization, balance for your peers, as well as balance
yeah,
for family. More
yeah.
importantly, you're married. So how do you balance all of that as an entrepreneur?
So it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not as hunky dory as it seems. But the two things we've always followed is that we've never really. So we have all worked before. Okay,
Okay.
so we this is not our life.
Yeah.
So we took the startup as we'll do it very passionately, ethically, and we'll do it well. If it works, works. If it doesn't work, doesn't matter, right? So we've always kept it like that. Our quorum of the
Isn't that as a
company,
safety net? But isn't that as a safety net that you have a net to? It's like you're walking the tightrope with your hands back. If you fall, you will
yeah,
not die. You have a safety
yeah,
net.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think the advantage of working for a decade, right? So you have some financial safety net, you have some emotional safety net, you have some personal safety net, right? So uh, it could not be the case with everyone, but for us, I'm saying it's as I said, I have not invested all my life into my startup, right? So yes, we'll do it right. We know we're solving a big problem. If it works, works. But we are not going to stress out and spoil our health because of this, right? So we still stress out a lot because we are at that cusp and we think that right now, if we don't break out and we don't micromanage, don't get stuff done, we are going to ruin an opportunity that could be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity today,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that doesn't mean that we will go and spend all our day, all our night, all our this thing on this one. So if you look at anybody in my company also, they are not going to be obsessed like a typical startup that they are working 24 hours, 360 days a week, right? So we have made sure that we need work-life balance as well. We have families with kids, and we've made sure our people also get the same culture. So culturally, what we've done as a company is that we work as friends. We are a very small company, just 70 people, 75 people globally. And we don't intend to scale beyond a certain level. And so, but we made sure that whoever is there is extremely high quality. We hire for culture and motivation rather than, so this is a hiring ground level thing that we've done from the first day, right? And then it is just hopefully translated across the company, right?
Okay.
Where everyone's sort of self motivated. Yes,
Nice.
they meet me, they meet Gaurav once in a while and they get even more pumped up. But most people, since also in pandemic remote, you
Yeah.
don't have an office space or office culture. We have hired for more self starters than people who need a lot of emotional hand holding,
Yeah.
right? So, and also same when I joined Google, we knew how we hired birds of the same feather, right? They mostly flock together. So
Mm-hmm.
we've tried to incorporate some of these things in our company also. Like, how do we make sure that all of you are of a certain type rather than of a certain skill.
Okay.
This is how we have solved. I think our attrition has been like low single digits. Like people who join us have not really left, right?
Nice.
So that's the other thing we pride upon, that hey, we've set up a company where people think twice to leave. Rather, let's put it that way. Right? They'll come and ask me, in fact, should I leave? Do you think it's the right thing to do? And I'm very open in my counsel. If I really think some of my people are getting an insane career opportunity, I tell them to go. Saying, man, I would have taken this shot as well, right? Do it. So we've kept it like that. It's a very informal company. That's the biggest win that we've had.
In the industry today, I will make a joke, right? Getting a basic data engineer is tough. And the
Yeah.
space which you are in the engineering space which you are in, where you're dealing with spatial data, that
Mhm.
just catapults to the different level altogether.
Yes. Yes.
From a
It's
skill
very
set
tough.
perspective, right? And you don't
Correct.
find, like I would find, if I sneeze right now, I will find 100 profiles on LinkedIn on data engineers. But if I have to sneeze also hard 100 times, I will not find a spatial engineer. Where
Yeah.
do you find this, right? 70 people, even like 70 is a big number, right? Where do you
Yeah,
find?
it's all Shaolin's magic. It's my CTO's
Okay.
magic. So my CTO is a two-time entrepreneur in
Okay.
China. He lives
Okay.
in Singapore. So he has sold two companies, sold one to Tencent and sold one to Grab.
Nice.
So he's been a technologist all his life, all his career. We've literally, so a lot of our first 40 hires were people each one of us has worked with already.
Oh, nice.
Either they used to work with us or report to us somewhere or work. So everyone just followed us into the next sort of, logical step. So that way we've been very blessed. The people who have worked with us generally have just blindly trusted us,
Okay.
saying, hey, okay, Ajay, Gaurav, Sharon are going, chalo, it'll be good, right? Something, it won't be miserable to work there.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, that's how we've done it. It's all just years of goodwill, combined with, hopefully people who like us as people. It's not the company or anything. So we've hired only known referrals mostly. Engineering, Shaolin has done a brilliant job. Data scientists, very good job. In fact, we still have a lot more people we can recruit than we can't. But given the market and the slowdown we've had, we're just making sure that we take this step down, step by step.
Okay. Now, just switching gears a little bit. Okay. Why Next Billion? The name.
You mean the name or the company?
The name.
So when we started the company, we were in Asia. We thought it's a next billion thesis, like thinking that, hey, we will enable location tech for the next billion users, because we thought the emerging markets are more tough, where we were solving the problem anyway.
Okay.
And the next billion users are going to come from there, which we've known for the decade now. So we call it next billion AI. We also thought it was a cool name, right? So I mean, people usually don't forget when they meet a company called next billion.
Yeah.
Uh, but other things people may forget. So it was just that, right? And we took this decision within 30 minutes, registered a domain. It was not like we brooded over the brand or the name or anything at all. It was very quick. So our old boss actually helped us with this a lot. I mean, he came up with this name. He said, hey, just do nextbillion.ai. It's good. And we said, okay, we'll do it.
Okay. Now, you spoke about this year to be a breakout year. Okay.
Yeah.
And what are the KPIs or North Star measures? I don't want to know the details of the exact KPIs, but how
Mhm.
do you kind of put yourself goals that this is going to be if we meet these, this is how we will define the breakout for,
Yeah.
for next
So
period.
see, as a business, you're a startup to first make money, right?
Yeah.
People usually keep forgetting you have to build a business, not just the product. So we have been very clear since first day of the company that hey, our company should make money. We
Mm-hmm.
should build revenue. We should build traction. We should also build cool technology. But it's crucial for us to build revenue. For us, always revenue has been one of the North Star metrics, even from early stages. Though, have we crushed the revenue out of the park? No, not really. But we've been step by step doing well.
Okay.
Also, a second is number of people who are using your platform, right? So for us, till last year it was not ready. So we had double digit customers, like we have triple digit customers now, right? We want to take it to higher triple digits this year. It means the platform usage should go up a lot. Anyway, with platform usage, revenue should go up.
Mm-hmm.
But revenue is not like as not sort of metric as platform usage, number of customers who are on the platform, production ready. Right. So for us, the most important thing this year is to bring people and use it in production. That your infrastructure is a cloud, and the cloud is being used to build apps, and our cloud is being used to run your business.
Right.
So if you're running your business on my basic calculations, I'm first of all very happy and proud of that. How many people are doing it is the bigger North Star. So the more people who are using it, you also get feedback into the system. So this is essentially what we are gunning for as a North Star. That can I have like mid to higher level triple digit in number of customers, like in hundreds? And can I scale the revenue to a couple of million that we are already in? And we are trying to see how much can we scale there, right? And is my product actually checking out? Meaning there's no churn next year starting, right? So, oh yeah, this year something is cool, vanity, people are using it. Next year they're saying, I don't need you. I'll build it in house. So
Yeah.
these are 3, 4 things we need to balance out as we go to this year.
Now, when you look at your space, and I know a little bit about supply chain because I work within that space from an analytics perspective, but when you look at what you correct me if I'm wrong, when you're dealing with maps, you're focused on road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me just take an example. A product gets built in a country X. Now,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a importing country or a company where it is being built for or intending to be sold at, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
a country Y. Now, that country X will ship that product either through a ship or through a plane.
Mm-hmm.
It gets lodged into a container, which basically gets loaded on a truck, which gets into a warehouse, and then that warehouse would either take smaller tempos, will ship it to a retail or another destination, and from there, either Grab or Uber Eats or whatever the models are, right? Either a car or a bus, or it gets into a store, for example. Now, if you look at that entire value chain or supply
Mm-hmm.
chain, okay, road is just part of it. As an example, it
Yeah.
can be that last
Yeah.
mile, or it can be a warehouse to a retail store, as an example, or
Mm-hmm.
to a bigger destination. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're building products now, specifically where you are, it can be catapulted into a much more larger space, especially for B2B
Correct.
stuff, right? If you want to take a product, let's say an iPhone from a factory in India or China or any other part of the world to a consumer's hand, if a business has to optimize its entire transportation, it needs to look at holistically. So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to hint at, is there a bigger plan or a next billion for next billion in that
So
space?
as of today, no. I think we want to stay more on the road. We've been asked railways, nautical, air. Either we can connect all the three to the road. See, theoretically, it sounds super sexy and cool. Okay,
Yeah.
but practically, it's a very, very tough implementation of
Mhm.
this sort of thing.
Yep.
So, uh, also, there's no commercial viability currently. Same theory, right? Are there 10, 20 people asking me for this? No, one or two are asking me for it, right? So I don't think the space will evolve into this, is what we think. At least the space of spatial and maps will be in more complementary areas. Like, can I do analytics of the same thing, right?
Right.
Can I visualize all my assets? Can I track my assets? Can I trace my assets? Rather than can I have a overall value chain like visibility of my assets, right? So I think that's what it's going to go towards. I also realize that mid and last mile is where the most burn is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First mile is usually pretty solvable and solved. Rather factory to a warehouse is
Yeah.
easy because it's two touch points. But once you do warehouse, distributor, retailer to customer, that's the more split in the supply chain. So I think the cost effectiveness and the real deal is better in this side rather than the first time. So that's how we see it today. Again, you don't never say never what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
this is today's view.
Interesting. Now, you know, let's switch to your personal side. How do you keep yourself updated on what's happening, especially in the spatial space?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and more importantly, how do you keep yourself sane? Like you said, you're managing your personal work-life balance.
Yeah,
How do you do that, right? What do you do? What are your tips for other
yeah.
entrepreneurs?
For me, sports is everything. I play, I watch. I'm very into sports. I mean, my dream was, I mean, I didn't have the physical ability to be an athlete, but I always look up to professional athletes a lot because you have somehow, it's not easy to go pro. I've
Yeah.
seen it. It's you need extreme amount of discipline, lot of dedication, uh, lot of hard work, to get there. So I think startup is like you're going pro, right? So I've always also believed if your company should be a franchise, it can't be a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you want to be a franchise, you have to hire. It should be ecosystem of support. You have to have the good players. You have to have coaches. You need to have medical staff. So that's how we build the company. Also, like we only take high performers who understand that they're a part of a cogwheel that has to run.
Yeah.
So for me, I keep myself sane by playing, watching. For me, sports is the only other. uh, let out I have, right? Because of uh, there's no time in general. Two is that I mean, I obviously love spending time with my daughter. She's two.
Okay.
So it's been very interesting to be a parent. I mean, I started my startup, became a parent the next year.
Oh
So I
wow.
had two kids the same year. So I think it's a very interesting journey to watch your kids grow up. I never thought I'll feel like this. I never thought I'll have this sort of emotional connect to this one small child, right? So it's unreal to see what's going on. So I think that's the other part of it. She even the worst of days, you go and hug your kid, and it's like somehow magically okay. So I think these two are for me keeping it going is what I would say.
So, what's next for Next Billion? This year is crucial year, but what's next for
Yeah.
Next Billion?
So for us, I think the most important thing this year is that we are debating whether we're thinking whether we should do a small top up of last year, and we have enough runway, but just to be even more safe. That's one area because we've already broken out. Is it the right time or waiting for next year or the year after? That's the other question. I think we will be in that zone somewhere. We need to consistently build on the product we have and in fact just enhance the product.
Yeah.
So product development for us, according to me, is done. We have a hero product in route optimization and distance matrix. We have a lot of complementary products we've already built. There's no need to invest in new product building. It's about packaging and making sure that the existing products work in a solution. So for us, that is the most important thing this year. We were looking at acquisitions of acquiring like one or two small companies in this space.
Okay.
Uh, it didn't work out, but I'm hoping in the future we can find some really small, nice companies in the space where we can integrate into our tech. So that's the other piece of it we're looking at for this year.
Very interesting. No, Ajay, I know it's early morning for you and the days are just getting started for you. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
No,
Uh,
thank you.
and it's a fun conversation, and it's something which I'm pretty fascinated by. When you think about Google Maps, there was a person who did this hack. I believe I forget which European country. He put
In
hundreds of
Germany.
in Germany. He
Yeah,
put hundreds of iPhones on a cart, and he just moved
yeah,
around, and the entire map turned red. Right, but there
correct.
was no one. And I've seen that happening with many of us. Right, we like today I was driving and it was showing me completely red, but I was on the road and I was like there was nobody there. So
Yeah,
there is the sometimes these logics or algorithms fail us, and what you're building or what your company is building as an alternative to what we presume the best of the breed, it's a tougher challenge, and kudos to you. It's a David Goliath fight which you've taken on,
yeah.
specifically in this space. And best of luck with that.
No, thanks, Anis. Yeah, I know. We'll see what happens again. We have take it one day at a time for now. There's no point of thinking about the future too much. We'll see what it holds later on.
And it's just fascinating as an entrepreneur how grounded you are, how focused you are, and more importantly, very clear. And there's one thing which I always believe: having the right business foundations and
Yeah,
running your business on a great business fundamentals, right? Revenue, profitability. You're
yeah,
focused on that as a company. You're not
yeah, yeah.
going behind these metrics which don't make sense, right? In the
Yeah,
business.
yeah. We call it dhanda still. We're
Yes.
saying if you don't run a dhanda, then there's no point of doing this. And this has been since first day. Even when capital was cheap, we thought we'll do dhanda only. No, really, because we're very paranoid entrepreneurs. I'll keep it that way. Uh, that's also maybe comes from the maturity of our age and where we are. We have families. Like if things are not very go and take all your risks in life. Sort of, we are not in the situation today, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that paranoia is keeping us going. Also, maybe that paranoia is not making us grow. We think it sometimes, right? Like, hey, are we being too paranoid, right? Are we not investing right? Are we not like burning enough? Trust me, it's not an easy philosophical decision to take.
Yeah.
Because at times you think, let me just go and burn this money and grow very quickly. But then you always have this paranoia that, step back. It's okay. It's okay. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens.
No, great. Thanks for your time, Ajay. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and best of luck for next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Anis. Thanks for having me. Okay, it's good chat.
Likewise.
See you. Bye.
Bye.